Hi, everyone. Welcome back. All right, so let's take a quick minute. So, as we have seen, our class theme for the year is going to be the apocalypse, the end of the world. I don't want us to quite think of apocalypse the way that we usually think of it. So, what does apocalypse really mean? Usually, when we hear that word, we think just straight up the end of the world, right? Like, fire raining down from the sky, mankind destroys itself with bombs, got good old Rona right there. It's not a positive word, but its original meaning is actually something a little bit different. When we go all the way back to the Bible, maybe you've heard of it, there is a word called Revelation, the book of Revelation, the last book in the Bible, right? And that word revelation is where we get our modern day word for apocalypse. So when we think about apocalypse, what we're in this class going to be thinking about isn't, oh, it's the end, oh, everything is hopeless. Instead, what we're going to be thinking about is times of apocalypse, times when it feels like everything is ending, are actually times of revelation. They tell us something about ourselves. It's the idea that you don't really know who you are until you face something really difficult. And that's when you find out the real truth about yourself, right? So we want to think about different apocalyptic events and how those events in our lives tell us something about ourselves, which is a really important thing to be thinking about right now when everything feels so bad all the time. We have to remind ourselves that it isn't ending, but maybe something is ending, and we need to know ourselves really well to know what we're going to take forward and what we're going to learn from this moment. So this is going to be our course structure this year. The way it's going to go is we're going to have 4 different units. The one that we'll be starting on tomorrow is going to be a unit on war. Sorry, these are backwards. But it's based on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which again, reference to the Bible. I promise this isn't a religious class. This is just the model that we're working with. But our first unit will be thinking about war, conflicts between different groups of peoples. And then we'll look at plague. Plague, another word for mass amounts of illness and sickness. We'll be able to talk a lot about this specific moment when we think about plague. Then we'll move on to famine. Famine is more related to food and mass starvation and not being able to provide for yourself. And then the 4th final horseman is death. So I promise it won't be quite as doom and gloom as it sounds right now. Because again, this isn't actually a class that's about the end. It's a class about what difficult things teach us about ourselves. And I think you're going to learn a lot from it. Okay, so this is our big overarching question, right? What does the end of the world reveal about society's ideals? So again, our ideals are the things that we value, right? What does society value? What does a society that chooses to go to war and deals poorly with a modern day plague or addresses or doesn't address issues of death and famine? What do these major apocalyptic events say about a society? And more, personally, what does it say about you? What do you learn about yourself from dealing with a world in which very difficult things are happening? This is the question that we're going to be thinking about all year, and hopefully you'll have more answers when we get to the end than when we started. So tomorrow, again, we are going to start with war. We're going to go a lot of different directions. The rough structure of things is going to be, we'll spend 4 weeks on each of these. So the first week will just be an introduction. So we'll start this week with the introduction to the concept of war. Then we will move into contemporary events. We'll talk about the war on drugs. We'll talk about wars in the Middle East. Then we'll do literature, so fictional texts, and then we'll do some writing. I'm excited to talk more about these things with you, but for right now, you'll get back to your slideshow and take a quiz on the syllabus and the class. I will be back to talk to you about the novel very quickly. See you in just a second.